tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan AGAJANIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is musician Brian Auger and artist Huguette Caland. Brian Auger was born in London and started playing the piano at the age of 3. He was listening to all types of music that his father and brother were playing around the house, from opera to jazz. By 1965, Brian was voted New Star of the Year by Melody Maker Jazz Piano Poll, and he took off. Was this your big break, Brian?
Well, it was a small break, but at that time I had just moved into, London was in a sort of a musical turmoil with Beatlemania and the Stones, and there was a whole mix of different bands playing in different clubs, you know. So I'd go on and play jazz, and then, you know, there'd be an R&B band come on, and then there'd be a rock band come on, and so I got mixed up in this whole sort of melee, and it kind of, what I wanted to do was to try to take the snobbery out of jazz and to let the young people appreciate, you know, that you can play more than 3 chords to make a tune. And
but here you were self-taught. You didn't take a lesson, and in your bio it says, "Thank goodness my father didn't make me take lessons."
Right.
Right?
Well, I say right because I think that what happens to you if you don't go through a school, in some ways, there's a sort of balance in this. You may come out academically much better, you might read better, but if you you know, apply yourself and you just play what you like, there's more chance that you will come out with your own style.
Which is what you did.
And I think that we're all trying to get to that anyway as artists, is to express ourselves and to be individuals, you know.
There was a player piano in the house.
Right.
What do you call it? Pianola?
A pianola. Yeah, play a piano in, you know.
Did that influence you? Did you use it?
I started on that. When I was 3, I could hang on to the, you know, the underneath the piano and pedal these pedals up and down, and all these notes would play. And so I realized that every time I played the same tunes, the same notes would play, I began to play all the melodies, copying the melodies an octave above everything that was going on. And when I look back now, I realized that because we had such a range of different music, opera, you know, Beethoven, Mozart, all sorts of stuff, that a lot of my basic harmony came from looking at those notes. I didn't read later on, but when I played with 2 hands, I'd hear a tune on the radio and I'd see, oh yes, it goes from, it would be in G, and then it would go to that pattern, you know, and then it would go there. And
so that just came naturally.
Right.
That has to be a natural talent. I never could do that. By 1968, you were talking about the melee of music going on in London.
Right.
You started putting these combinations of sounds together and took them to the Montreux and Berlin Jazz Festival.
Right.
What were they? How did this happen?
Well, basically, I was with a band called Steam Packet, where I got to actually step out of the jazz world, because I was a jazz snob as well, and I came into the jazz world. I also heard Jimmy Smith playing, and I bought an organ because I thought it was just a wonderful, exciting sound.
Now tell us what an organ is.
Well, organ basically is an early synthesizer, you know, an electronic Hammond organ.
Was it just did it stand up? Was it a stand-up thing?
Yep.
Oh, it was.
And, you know.
Because you're a renowned organ player.
That's right. This seemed to be a thing I took naturally too, you know, and it suited the kind of bands that were playing at that time in London.
But wasn't it a weird sound, an organ?
I always connected, when somebody said jazz organ, I always connected the organ sound with this incredible vibrato and people playing in theaters, you know.
Or churches.
Well, yeah, how could that be hip?
Yeah,
to play that sound applied. And then I heard the Hammond, and I heard Jimmy Smith, who applied a particular sound, and I thought it was wonderful. And so basically what I tried to do was, I tried to build a bridge between what were then the separate worlds of jazz and say rock and roll. And to have, I like that the freshness and the excitement of rock and roll rhythms and R&B rhythms. I wanted to keep my jazz harmony, so I used those kind of rhythm sections and overlaid the jazz changes over the top, and then this went forward. And then eventually, I suppose the word jazz fusion was coined.
Did you make it up?
No.
It just, the press or someone like that.
Yeah, I never heard that until I came and toured in America in about 1973, I suppose, I started to hear jazz fusion, and also the term crossover artist, which, because I mean, all my roots are in black American jazz. And so therefore, we would draw half and half audiences, and the promoters at that point said, "This is strange." And
there's something going on, right?
Yeah, this is strange. And I said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, because black artists draw black audiences, white artists draw white, and here we are with a kind of mix of everybody." And I said, "Well, I mean, in England, this is happening all the time. We'd play at an all-nighter in London. There'd be the usual London crowd, and then a lot of servicemen would come down from the US Air Force and US Army camps over the weekend, and they would be part of the audience. So we were kind of playing to that blend already."
But is Brian Auger the only one who plays jazz fusion? Do other people?
Oh, no, not at all.
No?
I would say that Herbie Hancock is in that camp. I would say that the early stuff that Chick Corea did, the early Return to Forever, then there were other people like the Crusaders, and there's a whole slew of people, Lonnie Liston Smith, and
all these people. You played with people who were in all of their groups, or those people who were in those groups played with you.
I toured early on when I was about 73, 74. We would go out as a package with Herbie's Headhunters, or play some dates with Chick Corea, or all these different. It would be like a package situation.
Let's go back to Steam Packet. It was Rod Stewart, Long John
Baldry,
and Julie Driscoll.
Right.
Were you composing the music?
Not at that time. I had made some compositions, but that thing got together. Long John Baldry was the big British blues singer at the time. He'd also featured 2 years in a row on the Beatles special at Christmas, which was an hour-long show, televised. So he was the big draw, and he wanted me to work with him, and we had to talk about it. He also had a guy that he thought was an up-and-coming, which was Rod Stewart. Rod was unheard of in those days.
Did Rod get to sing?
I already knew. Oh, absolutely.
He got to sing, and John Baldry got to sing because he was the draw. Did you sing?
I used to sing backup, and what we would do is I'd go on and play a couple of kind of jazzy things at the beginning. Julie would come on and sing a couple of tunes. Right. Rod would come on, and Julie and I would sing backup for Rod. And then John would come on, and we would all sing backup for John. And it was like a sort of I don't know, there was nothing really like it at the time, We'd do gospel, blues, rhythm and blues, Tamla Motown, everything.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating because you hear these titles put on things and you never know how they got to the point of where they got.
It's amazing now because what was then jazz fusion has now turned around, and in Europe there's a new acid jazz. They call it acid jazz. It's basically another blend. I mean, some of my old records are now called acid jazz.
Well, we have like Oblivion Express, which was like the first one, and then another Straight Ahead. But you've started that band again, and you're calling it the new Oblivion Express?
Exactly, yes. I think there's a whole new young audience, particularly in Europe, and I think it will be, it's coming to the States as well. And I would like to make sure that we go out there and play some real straight out music with great musicians to those young people, to make them realize that, hey, we're out there doing it. It's not all machines, and it's not all just production techniques.
This is like classic stuff then.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's classic. We have a tape of you. Tell us what it is and we'll run it.
This is a program that a friend of mine got together in Germany, and it's called Super Drumming.
Oh, right.
And we had all the best drummers in the world of all different types of music, and I was musical director, and I did all the arrangements and wrote a lot of music so that we could feature. We made 6 half-an-hour programs featuring every type of music
And was it shown on the air, or was it in public? Was it?
It was shown on the air. This was live in the studio, so this clip comes. This is at 8:30 in the morning. We're having to get everything rolling.
And this is Brian Auger playing.
And this has become a whole underground thing in Germany and Europe. You know, this program. I hope that maybe a PBS channel or something might pick this up for here. Super drumming.
Super drumming. Okay, let's see this. A little bit of Brian Auger from this. I mean, I think it's just fabulous. You were a big hit in Europe, and then you came and moved to America. Mm-hmm. When you moved to San Francisco, you had already been named 2 years in a row jazz organist of the...
It was Contemporary Keyboard Magazine.
Whatever.
Yeah,
but
the Reader's Poll.
Why did you leave Europe and go to San Francisco?
Well, because every time I came to America, my playing took such a step forward. And I think the reason was because all the music I grew up on was American jazz. And so when I got here, the environment and everything, it kind of spelled out why I played the way I did to me.
It obviously worked, because then you made this album. It was a Grammy nomination, Planet Earth Calling, and you made it after you moved here, and it was only for America, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, and that, you know, again, it's like it's a blend of all these, you know, of rock and R&B, funk, rhythms, Latin, all these things. You know, it's difficult to explain music in words. You just have to hear it. It's music in the end.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm glad we heard it. You came back and started working with Eric Burden. I think the two of you.
This was about 3 years ago, yeah.
You did a band together and did an album, and now with the new Oblivion Express, who's in that group?
Well, we're playing at the House of Blues tonight, actually, and it's our debut, and it debuts also for my daughter is singing with us, and it's her first time ever appearing in public.
How old is she?
She's 21. My son is on drums. He's 23. So it's Ali on vocals, Karma Auger, Karma K-A-R-M-A, on drums. Then we have two wonderful Afro-Cuban percussion players. One is Long John Oliva, who's a master player, and a young guy, Richard Reguera, who's a wonderful, wonderful player. We have Les King on bass, and we have Fred Clark on guitar, and myself on keyboards.
So it's a really big group.
It's fairly big, yes, seven-piece.
And then will you tour?
Yes, we will, yeah.
Now, is your daughter named, who's she named after?
Well, she's not really named after anybody. Her name is Ali, A-L-I.
But your son?
My son, his name, when he was little and he was in the hospital and he'd just been born, we didn't have a name for him, my wife Ella and I, and so it kind of went on for about 3 or 4 days, and what should we call him? And suddenly, we may have been talking to one of our friends about different names, and a telegram arrived saying, you know, congratulations, Karma is born. Oh. And so we kind of we started to call him Karma after that, and he became Karma. You know?
Fabulous.
And it's been wonderful Karma for me, I must say. You know?
And you've given us so much insight into what's happening in the world of music. We thank you, Brian Auger.
It's my pleasure. You know.
And we're going to be back with Huguette Caland, whose artwork is on the set.
She's fantastic.
It's a friend of ours.
Yes, it's a friend of ours, wonderful artist and wonderful person.
And we'll be talking to Huguette as soon as we come back. Don't go away. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with artist Huguette Caland. Huguette was born into a family of politicians in Beirut, Lebanon. At 16, she was tutored by Italian artist Fernando Manetti, who was living in Beirut at the time. Huguette then went on to study art at the American University, all the while printing, sculpting, designing clothes, and in the 70s she moved to Paris. Her work has been in exhibitions throughout the Middle East, Europe, and here in America, where she's been working since 1988. Why did you come to the United States to work?
I really don't know. My English is not my best language, so you have to excuse my poor English.
Wasn't Paris exciting enough for you?
It was very exciting, but I think I lacked light. I missed the light and I missed the sun. And my studio didn't have enough light. I was working with electricity. And I just moved to California because I thought it was the thing to do. I don't know why.
I think we have to make sure that we know you moved to California after 1 year in New York. New York obviously didn't work out.
No, I didn't move to California after New York. I went to New York, went back to Paris, and that had nothing to do with moving to California.
You didn't live in New York for any time?
Yeah, but I lived in New York and went back to Paris without the intention of coming to California. And then a few years later, I came to California and stayed. I came to stay in California. In fact, I didn't know anything about California.
We have something that I think as women we should look at. You came from an Arab world where women are not exactly the top of the line.
That's absolutely true.
How did your family accept you're being an artist and a working artist at that?
I never asked the permission to do anything to anybody, and I think nobody gives you your freedom. You just take it. You have to step and do what you feel you should do, and I never regretted to have done it. And as I never did it in an aggressive way, I think it was very well accepted. And now I have no opposition to what I have done. It has been criticized. But now I think everybody, I have the full support of my children, of my husband, at a distance.
That's what I wondered, because at the time, were they supporting you? I mean, 20 years ago?
Not really. No, not really.
You know, you illustrated books and magazines and different things like that. I would think that that would be more acceptable for a woman's place.
Anything that would keep a woman at home is more acceptable, but something made it easier. One thing made it easier for me to be able to leave Lebanon. My children were swimming champions, and they were in the French team of swimming. So I could follow their swimming being in Paris. So I decided to leave Beirut in 1970. In 5 minutes. It means I said I was leaving, and 5 days later I was on the plane with the children. And that's the same way 18 years after I came to Los Angeles.
When you were painting, or you were sculpting with an artist in Paris.
At one point, yes, I did some work with George Apostou, who was a great sculptor. He died. And he was Romanian, and we worked together on clay, and I worked in granite and in wood and in many other medias, but mainly painting and etching and drawing. I had etchings, went to the Biennale of Venice in 1972. It means I can't even remember what I've done.
You know, one thing we talk about is women staying at home and how, you know, it's acceptable. You started designing clothes, and I think the clothes, I'm going to just show
The clothes were in Washington now, yeah.
These clothes were at the Smithsonian,
no,
the Women's
Museum. And they didn't show in the catalog the fourth dress. They showed it in the show, because it is a nude that is designed.
But this is more acceptable. This sounds like what a woman could do.
No, not even, because they are very controversial. They are very subversive.
Oh, so you had your own little way of doing things.
They are very traditional cuts and very traditional dresses, and the drawings that come on top of them are not at all.
I see.
So it was kind of, but it was very well to show them in Washington.
I'm going to show this one that was not
in the catalog, but I wouldn't have sent the 3 others hadn't they accepted to show this one.
Rudy Gernrich did something in the 70s that was a nude drawing as well, a designer.
On a dress?
Yes, but they didn't show it either.
Well, this now is shown, it was in Washington's museum, it's touring America, and it's totally accepted. People were in line to see it. They were done 25 years ago in Beirut, in a Muslim area, and it was totally controversial even to think of doing it and have a man embroider it. So that was an interesting
That is
part.
to have a man embroider
It. Silk on silk, yeah.
Now, we want to talk about some of the art on the set, because these look to me, and I know they are, there's an artist in town, very, very good artist named Ed Moses. I think you started painting these. I don't know, did you know him? Oh, by accident.
No, I just had met him, and Ella, the wife of Brian Auger, I just saw her trying to do a drawing of Ed Moses, and she showed it to me, and then it hit me. I didn't like her drawing. And I went back home, and I thought that he deserved better treatment. I liked his look, and I just began doing a portrait and then another one, and I did many of him.
So we have 2 here.
You have 2 here, but I did maybe 70 or 80 portraits of Moses with drawings, maybe more even.
Did he ever sit for you?
No, never. I don't need him to sit.
Is that, well, how does that happen? Where does the inspiration
A visual accident. I think my eye clicked, and it was kind of an immediate photography.
And
I
you
don't
just
know,
kept
yeah.
it, different
And from
colors,
time to
different
time,
sizes?
From time to time, even if I'm doing something totally different, he comes back, but in different shapes, and that's fine.
And this behind you is a self-portrait. It's wonderful.
It is a very old self-portrait. I did it during the 6-day war, in fact, in Beirut I was.
You were there at the time?
I was there at the time, and yeah, that's when I did it.
What about your favorite media? What do you like to work in since you've sculpted and designed?
Life is my best media. I think so.
Do you like to work on canvas? Or?
I like to work on anything that falls under my hand.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What about future as far as shows, or what type of work will you be producing in the future?
I just finished a show in Beirut. It was the first time I went there in 21 years. I had my first show, and it was a very important exhibition. On the 1st of June, I just am back out of it, and the next project would be an exhibition in Israel. I would be the first Arab artist to go there. I could go there with my French passport, and I'd like to do it because I think that art should go always further and quicker than politics.
That's the way to break through the politics.
I feel that very strongly.
Would you be showing something like this small drawing next to you?
I don't know what I'll be showing.
Oh, you haven't got...
I don't know what I'll be showing. I'll probably work from scratch again.
I'm going to show a couple of these pieces, because these are...
These were made in Paris in the 70s, the late 70s.
They have a different feel than this, so explain this.
And everybody thought that they were looking very Californian. And in fact, when I came to California, everybody thinks that my work is very European. So you never know what you do.
We had one of the stories that you told, I don't know if there's anything in here, is about a long list of letters that you had written to someone, and you made several collages. Do we have a picture of that?
I don't have a picture. No, I couldn't bring too many things. But in fact, yes, I worked for 2 years nearly on letters that were returned to me that I had written. And
someone saved them, is that it?
The guy I was writing to saved them and gave them to me and died shortly after, and I didn't touch the letters for about 10 years. And after 10 years, a friend of mine told me he was scared to open these letters. It was a big parcel, and I don't like to be challenged, and I was afraid of everything. I still am, but then I opened them and I began. I realized that in writing the letters, I was editing my life, and in using the letters, I was editing the letters,
Ah.
not to show what I didn't want to show. They were very personal.
So you were doing away with parts
I
of the
was
letters?
editing everything I didn't want to be read. I hid under tons of paints, with sometimes a few words appearing, and sometimes I left the letters nude. So I did a very big use of the letters. I did collages.
You collaged, and then some of them had paintings
And
of your
some of them-
self-portraits.
yeah, lots of them had self-portraits, and it was still faces and places, but with collages. And that was it. It was 2 years. I worked on them for 2 years. There were quite a lot of them.
In keeping with that theme, would you ever do a book? Now that you've destroyed these letters, could you go back and do a book of your life, somehow incorporating these things?
I am writing for the first time in my life in English, and English is really not my good language, but I don't know why words are coming very easily to me now in English while writing more than in speaking.
And will we see illustrations with it?
I don't know.
Oh, I hope so.
I know nothing about it.
I hope we see illustrations. We loved having you with us today,
Thank you
Huguette.
very much,
Thank
Joan.
you for
Thank you
being
for
with us.
inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and keep writing to us at 520 South Grand, 971. We'll see you next time.